Solo Leveling has been one of the most popular Korean manga, or manhwa in this case, over the past few years. And I'll argue for two pretty damn good reasons. Number one is the amazing artwork that is laid out in most of the panels. The aura effects, monster designs, the environment, the list goes on and on. Solo Leveling has some really damn good artwork, without a doubt. And then number two are the fights. The quality of the fights is epic. In a manhwa manga comic fashion, the fights are drawn in such an epic, bombastic way. The MC Sung Jin-Woo, aka Mr. Woo Woo! Mr. Woo Woo is an absolute beast. An assassin build with absurd strength, durability, and speed. Speed! For days on end, that would make even Wally West defecate in his pants. And of course, the iconic army. Oh, the army of the underworld at his beck and call. As if it was Helsing. With one simple word, arise. Arise, my friends. Mr. Woo Woo has been a force of nature for a minute. And so many of the fights in the series, and his fights in the series, have been downright epic. But in the latest chapters of Solo Leveling, Sung Jin-Woo looks like the Korean Goku. It is nuts what is going on, and the scope of power for the entire series has risen to a whole new level. So, if you don't get spoiled too much, and you want to read the series for yourself, and find out how nuts he gets yourself, then I would suggest, for now, my friends, bow out. Bow out. But if you don't care, or you already know the greatness of Mr. Woo Woo, then my friends, come on in. Come on in. The water's just fine.
Come on in. The water's just fine.
But before you enter the pool, make sure to drop a like to support your boy's content. Drop a subscription, and of course, click on that bell to join the notification squad.
Let's do this.
So before we go into what's going on right now with Solo Leveling and Sung Jin-Woo, I want to talk about where we've come from. Let's talk about Kaio-Ken Sung Jin-Woo before we get to Super Saiyan Sung Jin-Woo. Now for this, I'm going to use predominantly the Dungeon Break in Japan arc, and then prior arcs to that as well. And in this situation, the entire country of Japan was on the verge of destruction by an S-rank dungeon break, and a horde of giants were running across Japan. The main character, Sung Jin-Woo, handles this whole situation with his shadow army. So it definitely does make you realize they're actually reading a manhwa and not a manga, considering how Japan is getting absolutely reamed, and it's the Korean guy that's to save Japan. Before Jin-Woo himself, I want to talk about his army. That's right, the Shadow Army. And this will give us a good baseline on how powerful Mr. Woo himself really is. Now, during the dungeon break in this arc, Sung Jin-Woo had members of his Shadow Army all across Japan, hunting down these giants that are roaming the land. These giants were pretty damn powerful themselves, and roughly are the size of buildings. Sung Jin-Woo could do this for several days on end without much problem. Furthermore, as long as Sung Jin-Woo's man supply doesn't run out, his Shadow Legion can regenerate endlessly. So even if some of these giant guys kill some of the Shadow Soldiers, they would reform not instantly. And we see this very clearly when Sung Jin-Woo has his entire army fight against the very large giant defender of the dungeon gate itself. And we see how Sung Jin-Woo's army covers a large part of the ruined city of Tokyo. And his army consists of all sorts of magical beasts, like ice bears, orcs, high orcs, knights, monster ants, and so on and so forth. What's even more important is that his Shadow Legion is not all created equally. There are top-end guys in his Shadow Legion. Guys like Egress, Tank, Tusk, Greed, and Beirut, absolutely Beirut, are all considered Elite Knight grade and above. An Elite Knight Shadow Soldier can fight on par with an S-rank Hunter. An S-rank Hunter is the highest letter grade Hunter in the world of Solo Leveling. There is a higher grade, but when it comes to the letter grades, these are the highest grade Hunters. So Commander grade Shadow Soldiers, which are above the elite Knight grade Shadow Soldiers can overpower these S-rank hunters in terms of strength, speed, endurance, durability, mana output, and so on. So let's use one of Sung Jin-Woo's strongest Shadow Soldiers as a reference here. I'm going to use Tusk as an example, because in a prior arc to the Japanese Dungeon Break arc, the Demon Castle arc, we see Tusk have enough destructive power to completely annihilate an entire section of a city in the Demon Castle around chapter 80 in a single attack. An entire section of a city was leveled in one attack. Tusk is just an example of one of Sung Jin-Woo's best underlings. Each shadow of note has its own unique skills, features, and abilities. And where I am right now in the series, almost caught up, but not quite there yet, his two best men, Igris and Beirut, in terms of their combat ability, they are far, far more powerful than Tusk, because these boys have leveled up to martial grade shadows, the highest evolved stage shadow a soldier can beat. And yes, I did forget to mention, actually, that the shadow soldiers themselves, they do level up and they do evolve and become stronger. So Tusk, during the Demon Castle arc, is way less powerful than Tusk during the Japanese Dungeon Break arc, and even less so compared to what he is now. So now we've gotten to Jin-Woo's boys. Let's talk about Kaio-Ken Jin-Woo himself. Jin-Woo himself has a host of abilities that make him an absolute terror. So Jin-Woo, number one, has an immunity to all status effects in terms of things like paralysis or poison. He also has the Harry Potter invisibility cloak using an ability called Stealth Black. He can become invisible via camouflage to his surrounding environments. He has complete mastery over daggers and short swords with deadly accuracy. He also has telekinetic abilities via the ruler's authority or the dominator's touch, which doesn't consume mana for the most part. It doesn't consume mana for the most part. It's ridiculous. But most of all, the basis of his shadow army and his shadow abilities is the ability to raise the shadow of corpses and add them to his army by simply saying that magic word, arise. Sung Jin-Woo has the power of the underworld at his disposal, and he can utilize them very, very well. He can share senses with his shadows, so what they see, he can see, and so on. He can give his shadows buffs with the domain of the monarch, where he adds a 50% buff in battle power to each of the shadows that are within his own domain. He can hide his shadow soldiers within other people's shadows and keep tabs on them, and so on and so forth. And what I think personally is the craziest power that he has, outside of raising the dead itself, clearly, is the shadow exchange ability. Sung Jin-Woo can switch himself with any of his shadow soldiers, no matter where they are, in an instant. By the way, check out that drip. Crazy. If the Saiyans started watching K-pop and BTS, it's over. Let's say that Sung Jin-Woo hides one of his own shadow soldiers in the shadow of a Florida man. It doesn't matter where Sung Jin-Woo is, whether it's in South Korea, another dungeon, another dimension. It doesn't matter where he is. Mr. Woo Woo can switch locations with them instantly. That's crazy. It has a cooldown of a few hours, but for Kaio-Ken Jin-Woo, that is its one and only real flaw. All these things I just mentioned are on top of his already haunting stamina, speed, strength, and toughness. Haunting. We've seen him knock down monsters the size of buildings with several orders of magnitude the toughness of buildings with just raw physical power. He's taken massive damage to the point where he's near death and still been able to fight regardless. During Demon Castle, the same arc where we see Tusk destroy a section of a city in Demon Castle, Mr. Woo Woo is able to fight on par with the final boss of that arc, who uses lightning-based attacks. Sung Jin-Woo could dodge and react to these lightning-based attacks. And in the Japanese Dungeon Break arc, a few arcs later, the speed that Sung Jin-Woo has compared to then well outclasses it. Sung Jin-Woo is several orders of magnitude faster in that arc than he was during the Demon Castle arc. And this applies to his top shadow soldiers as well. Not just him, his top shadow soldiers are faster than when he was in Demon Castle dodging lightning. Igris, one of his top men, even uses the lightning sword that belonged to Demon King Baran, the final boss of Demon Castle. One of his own men uses that sword, and it's epic. It is unbelievably epic. So the difference of power between Kaio-Ken times 20 Jin-Woo versus regular Kaio-Ken Jin-Woo is massive. For example, Jin-Woo's mana pool during the fight against Baran in Demon Castle was roughly around 7,000 MP. During the Japanese Dungeon Break arc, due to absolutely insane events, his mana pool skyrocketed to over 100,000 magic points. Over 100,000. 100,000. So Sung Jin-Woo, Kaio-Ken versus Kaio-Ken times 20, it is insane. And this man's power in Kaio-Ken through and through has been phenomenal. Not only for himself, but also his men as well, his shadow soldiers. They are ridiculously powerful. But now we gotta talk about when Sung Jin-Woo went gold. We gotta talk about SSJin-Woo in the latest chapters of Solo Leveling. Because all of the crazy things that I mentioned before about Sung Jin-Woo's power, his abilities, no, it's too much. Here we go. Now, I will not get to all the details on how it happened, but there were two top-end villains. Call them Fenrir, the Monarch of Fangs, and the Ice Elf, the Monarch of Frost, in chapter 164. One villain, after feeling the power of SSJin-Woo, ran via a portal, while the other one was going to destroy the whole city using crazy ice attack. Now, Beirut smashes that into pieces, that giant ice crystal, and SSJin-Woo emerges with the biggest power-up in the series we've seen by far. In chapter 165, we see the power of SSJin-Woo. Jin-Woo is able to track down Fenrir, who ran like a mutt with his tail between his legs.
Why are you running?
By making some kind of field to sense, I shit you not, the entire planet. What? The size of an entire planet, and sense the entire planet. And my God, damn, that was a good looking shot. Oh, just seeing the planet, seeing the sunlight shine on it, then seeing him expand his entire domain, his entire field across the whole planet. My goodness. Those were some sexy panels. Make no mistake. Again, the artwork in Solo Leveling is really damn good. Now remember, Sung Jin-Woo's ability before about Shadow Exchange. He can switch locations anywhere with his shadow soldiers. Now Jin-Woo, he senses where Fenrir is. He teleports from Seoul, South Korea to Brazil in an instant.
This is madness!
No shadow soldiers necessary. He just teleported from South Korea to Brazil, right next to Fenrir. An absolutely gargantuan K-pop boy band flex. Just like that. That's tough. That is tough, yo. That's scary. That's real scary. No cooldown. He just did it. He just did it. It was so shocking, man. If you don't know, by the way, I do my live reaction to leveling on my Cole Requiem channel. Link in the box below. You will see my initial reaction to that moment. It was absolutely Looney Tune status. But we're not done. Because later in that same chapter, Fenrir transforms to full wolf form. And he is absolutely gigantic. As big or bigger than the mountain peaks around him. And he completely towers the rainforest that he's standing on. In terms of size, he puts Karam from Naruto to shame. But what happens next is every tree hugger's nightmare. Because Sung Jin-Woo, in order to cut off one of Fenrir's arms, so casually, so effortlessly, cuts down damn near the entire rainforest in one motion.
Please help me.
We've discussed before how fast, how powerful Sung Jin-Woo is. But this level up, and being able to do what he did in that instant, to cut off one of his arms, so casually, so effortlessly, is absolutely disgusting. And given the conditions that Sung Jin-Woo needed to achieve in order to gain this crazy power-up, it's also, I think, implied that Sung Jin-Woo is somewhat, if not entirely, immortal. Meaning that unless he's actually killed in combat, he just won't die. The scale of power for Sung Jin-Woo has jumped to an astounding level. And the things that Sung Jin-Woo did 80 chapters ago are a far, far cry from what he just achieved in the latest chapters of solo leveling. Plus, in chapter 166, where I am right now, personally, it looks like Sung Jin-Woo's Shadow Army is about to get an absolutely gigaton buff. Gigaton buff. Like what we've never seen before. Top end niggas are about to roll on in mass. And it's nuts. It's nuts. Finally, outside of Sung Jin-Woo himself, the scope of power for the world of solo leveling seems to be bigger, more powerful than what we've seen so far. The Monarch of Destruction, who should be coming relatively soon in the story, is said to be on the same level of power of the Monarch of Shadows. And the Monarch of Shadows is essentially what Jin-Woo has fully become for this mega power-up. And in the flashbacks, we find out the origin of these great powers of solo leveling, which are from the, quote, absolute being, who existed when there was nothing else but light and darkness. This absolute being split light and split darkness to create the great powers of solo leveling today. A being who created tools that could even turn back time for an entire world by 10 years. So it looks like this absolute being is the apex progenitor of what is deemed to be the solo leveling world. Whether it is from a galaxy standpoint or from a universal standpoint, it's unclear. But the ancient feud of light and darkness, the rulers and the monarchs, has been going on for so long, where it's, I think, hinted at, where countless worlds have been destroyed and a countless number of lives have been lost in the process. So at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was make a video about the absolutely insane things going on right now in solo leveling. I've been reading the series for a minute, and it's been a crazy ride just seeing how powerful Sung Jin-Woo has become. Solo leveling continues to be a fun and epic read with some of the best artwork out there, without a doubt. And if you do want to sit through hours upon hours of solo leveling greatness and read-throughs, you can check out my reactions to all that, link in the box below. I'm going to catch you guys and gals on the flip side. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. Be sure to stay safe. Peace out, and have a nice one.